all of you to tonight's event, The Logistics of Change, Creating Legal Frameworks for Meaningful Action. I am Thais Carter. I'm the coordinator for communications and strategic initiatives for the Institute for Leadership and Service. One of the great joys of my job is that I get to coordinate our Pathways to Purpose speaker series. If this is your first time at a P2P event, welcome. It is our goal that over the course of your 4 years as a student here, no matter what your major, discipline, interest, that we would bring in a speaker who connects with what you want to be doing in the world. So tonight, we are very fortunate to have with us Cristal Brisco. She is a 2002 graduate of Valparaiso University. Currently, she is serving as College Counsel at St. Mary's College in South Bend, Indiana, but we're going to be talking about kind of the full breadth of her professional experience, which includes working as Corporation Counsel for the city of South Bend. I'm not going to go deep on her bio because you all have it in front of you, but just some housekeeping things before we get started. There will be time for questions at the end, so kind of be taking notes about anything that you might want to ask Cristal. Also, if you would like to be kept up to date on all Institute events, we have an e-newsletter sign-up sheet that's over there on the snack table. Also, next week, we will be holding a skill building workshop on making better conversation, which may seem kind of silly, but actually when it comes to both academic and professional settings, this is really, really important. So part of what we're going to be focusing on is that the key to being a good conversation partner is actually asking better questions. Our skill building workshops tend to happen in small group and then kind of large group debrief. So it's not going to be just sitting and having people talking at you. We do a lot of case study type stuff. So I hope you can join us next week, right back here, 5:30 to 7. We provide dinner. So I hope you can join us for that. And our next Pathways to Purpose speaker is Sandra Album. She runs a translation services company in DC, and so she's going to be talking about how she uses her background in languages to kind of give back to other nonprofits. Apparently translation services are very expensive, and so her work in making high quality translation available to nonprofits is pretty amazing. She's also worked as a translator for ambassadors at the embassy in Spain. She has this great story where she's the only person who speaks Catalan in like a certain mile radius, so she gets to be the translator for like the Spanish soccer team, and she just has a great personal story, and she's going to be with us here on February 7th. So without further ado, Cristal, welcome back.
Well, thanks. It's nice to be back. A lot has changed since I graduated in '02.
Yeah, all the new buildings, all the new things. One of the ways that we like to start when we're lucky enough to have alum with us is why don't we hear a little bit about why you chose Valparaiso University?
Well, it started on a campus visit. Admittedly, I'm a nerd, so we'll just start off with that. I was a member of the Latin Club and president of the Latin Club when I was in high school, and we took a tour of the classics class here and went around campus, and I really liked the intimacy and the interaction that folks had with their professors. And I also was attracted to the liberal arts tradition of the university and the fact that it was faith-based.
Excellent. And were you the type of freshman who came in and you knew exactly what you wanted to do, or were you more of kind of like the trying to figure out what you wanted to be and what that was going to look like?
Right. Well, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I just did not know what that looked like. Right. So the story with that, frankly, is I debated everything, including debate with my teachers in elementary and middle school, which is I don't recommend. But so I remember one of the nuns telling my parents, like, she needs to be a lawyer, you know, and I had never met a lawyer, and so my dad introduced me to a local lawyer in town, and he told me about what he did, and the way he described his job was helping people, and that resonated with me. And I just kind of went all in and honing the skills that were conveyed to me of being essential to being an attorney. So making sure that you're listening, making sure that you research and you write it in order to communicate effectively. Mm-hmm. And so coming to Valpo, it was very essential to me to make sure I took courses that would allow me to expand on that skill set.
So if you could kind of go deeper on that, what about kind of your experiences in the classroom and then your experiences outside of the classroom and the relationships you made with faculty and staff and other students, do you feel really kind of prepared you to go into this field?
So I was very glad to hear that the university still has core. I don't know if you guys appreciate it now, but he's shaking his head. I did not mean to call you out, by the way. I'll look this way. But I so appreciated the opportunity to exchange ideas in an intimate space and a soft space. And that, frankly, for me, helped me hone the art of listening. And it is also the way classroom discussions in general occur on this campus are one where I feel really encourages the exchange of ideas, again, in that safe space. I go back to the skill set of listening. I think too often, and what was a flaw of mine, is that I'm like always just ready to respond back, right? And so that's not good, because as a lawyer, you need to make sure that you are hearing what the other side is saying. It will inform your decision making and response, but also will lead to a better solution for your client.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting, so, you came in knowing that you wanted to be a lawyer. When you left here, you went to law school at the University of Notre Dame, and since then you've held these 3 positions. So as an attorney at Barnes & Thornburg, and then as Corporation Counsel for the City of South Bend, and now as the College Counsel at St. Mary's College. How in each of those 3 positions has your idea of what you wanted to be accomplishing as a lawyer evolved, or how does this kind of mirror your professional development, kind of what you wanted for yourself in these settings?
For me, I always wanted to make sure that my career sort of is a way of service, right? I think too often folks look at attorneys as you want to make money, you're going to be aggressive, etc. And that was not my end goal, and it is not. And so the decision to join Barnes & Thornburg was one to make sure that I received training on how to be a lawyer. I've shared this with some of you guys earlier. You go to law school, they don't teach you how to be a lawyer, right? They teach you how to think like a lawyer, know where to research things, etc. But going to a national law firm, I knew that they would have the resources for me to get the training that I needed, and I would be learning from folks that are at the top of their field, and really getting an idea of being able to dabble in different practice areas to know what I wanted to do. Because again, end goal for me was whatever I would do, it would be a life of service. And so my most joy in being in private practice was doing employment litigation. And I was on the defense side. I know defense lawyers get a bad rap. But what I enjoyed and appreciated from that experience is the impact that I was able to have in the workplace. Even though I was defending employers, I was able to really feed into them about maintaining a culture where every employee deserves dignity and respect. And that's, that is going to be like far-reaching, from whether you have a company with 5 employees to whether you have a company with 1,000 employees. The opportunity to go to join Mayor Pete Buttigieg is one that, it took there was a little dance there. Mayor Pete invited me to join his team, and I was like, no, I don't know if I want to take that pay cut. Because I wanted to serve, but I still wanted to be able to, eat. So, but my experience in representing government entities in private practice and to see the reward that government lawyers had, I was like, I want that. And he had a vision for the city that I was able to buy into. And ultimately, so I stayed there for 4.5 years, and I joined St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana, in September of this year. I made that decision because it's mission-based. I feel that we are at a time in our country to where the value of women's only education and female empowerment is of the utmost importance. And again, it was one of those situations to where there's a new president, she has a vision, and I could be a part of impacting that change.
Well, Well, so I'd like to kind of go deep on your 4.5 years as part of Mayor Pete's administration. And, part of the whole idea of tonight is talking about the logistics of change. And clearly, South Bend has been undergoing quite the revitalization. And so I'd like to get into a little bit about what it was about his vision and how you felt from your role as Corporation Counsel you would be able to kind of achieve the goals that he had in mind for the city.
Sure. So, the funny thing about that is, so I was thinking in terms of, okay, the Corporation Counsel, you're going to be responsible for enforcing ordinances, making sure that government is functioning in a transparent and compliant manner. I did that, but I did so much more. I could have never anticipated that I would be helping with community outreach and seriously developing a strategic plan for the city. And I was just really drawn to the fact that, we're the same age, right? He's the youngest mayor of a city of 100,000 or more in the history of Indiana, and also in the country, he's like one of the youngest. And so there was this attraction to being the change that you want to see, and knowing that I can shape the community that I'm raising my family in. And the community, they were looking for change. They didn't know what that exactly looked like, but we were coming on the heels of the longest serving mayor of South Bend. And there was a lot of kind of jokes about, well, you can't trust government and everything. And he just brought this fresh idea of, first action I'm going to do is to institute an ethics code for city government. And we are actually going to treat government as a customer service and exchange. And so what was a little daunting is frankly the team that he assembled, I think only one of us had public sector experience. And so we were all coming from the private sector. And why I think that was very helpful in the transition is that we viewed the administration of government through the consumer's eyes, through the constituents' eyes. And when you view it that way as to how we can make government more helpful to the resident and how can we make it easier to deal with, it's amazing the shift in type of policies that you can create. So I was attracted to that.
One of the things that I, just thinking about an active citizenry and what that looks like, oftentimes there are folks who care very deeply about how government affects them, but don't really understand kind of what goes into making policies happen, actually enforcing things like ordinances. So what are some things about kind of civic engagement that you wish that people kind of understood what was going on behind the scenes, or things that perhaps you appreciate more now that you've kind of been able to look behind the curtain?
Well, I think as a government official, your job is to provide basic services so seamlessly that folks can go about doing their day and focusing on the important things of their life, right? And so just a very practical example is providing over 7 billion gallons of clean drinking water.
Mm-hmm,
right?
sure, yes.
You're never gonna get a phone call from City Hall that says, I just wanna thank you guys for that awesome glass of clean drinking water that I came out of my faucet today. But yet there's a whole team that are doing that, that are testing and making sure. I would say putting together the budget, the municipal budget process is something that I think folks, I wish that we had a more engaged constituency on that. The budget for the city of South Bend is $387 million. And you talk about the level of community outreach meetings that we had, it was sometimes disappointing to come to a meeting where we can talk and convey ideas about budget and only have a handful of people there. And so if you are interested in the direction of where you live, I encourage you, especially as young, bright, educated students, to be engaged in that process.
Now, if you could pick, let's say, one thing that really stood out as a challenge that you weren't expecting, but are kind of proud of the way that you handled it, and then maybe something that, it was like your baby and you kind of saw it through from start to finish, some most memorable aspects of your time in the administration.
I have to pick one.
You can pick two.
You pick
We'll
two?
be okay with two. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll talk about. Should I talk about the case that I talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Molly Cyclops?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. I'll talk about that. So I'm going to choose one of the most contentious trials that I had during my time with the city, and not because the facts are pretty, but because it made me a better advocate and it made me a stronger person. And it dealt with a trial based upon allegations of unlawful search and seizure by our police department and an excessive force claim, so civil rights. We had the very unfortunate incident to where our officers were chasing someone and went into the home, and they thought they had the right guy, but it wasn't, okay? Our K-9 unit sniffed the guy, followed the scent to the house. Turns out it was the brother that lives there, and so they look very much alike, and our officers, they ended up using the taser apparatus on this young man, and it was a very unfortunate and sad situation, and our officers apologized for it, and there was an admission that we were wrong in the way that we entered the home. And so it was community outrage of, officers should be fired, etc. And this incident happened in 2012, and so I inherited it when I came in as Corporation Counsel. And so I didn't have the decision-making power over how to guide the discipline in that, but the officers were disciplined. But what I did have authority to do was to set out how to handle the litigation that followed. And I could not let my emotion come into that. I had to look at what the law says. I had to look at what is in the best interest for the city as a whole in terms of the fiscal stewardship responsibility that I have. So someone makes a claim for $5 million, we're not selling this case for $5 million, right? So I looked at the jury verdicts of what excessive force claims or unlawful entry fall in, and I came with a number and presented that number. And they said, go pound sand, we're not settling it for that. And, I had colleagues saying, Cristal, this is gonna get national press, like, settle this. And I will try my best to settle it, but we will not pay over what we should settle for. So we had a 3-day trial. And as predicted, we did lose on the unlawful entry and the unlawful seizure. However, we did win on the excessive force claims and battery. And so the jury came back with a verdict of $1 for each of, against each of the defendants, 3 officers. And so it was a $6 jury verdict. And, the heat that came from that verdict was national press of South Bend, Indiana, where your civil rights are only worth $1. Mm-hmm. And, the way that we handled that, we were not, and I will say, the mayor and I, we took the lead on that. Mm-hmm. We were not gleeful about getting this verdict. It wasn't celebratory. Yes, it was a victory, but someone's rights had been violated. We went through the judicial process. This is the verdict that came in. We had an opportunity for the mayor to sit down with the young man that occurred to and just really bridge that tension that was there. And I would say that the reason why that was very contentious for me, like personally, was there was just a lot of lot of things that were said, like,
Right.
You don't care about this community, etc. But I feel like our handling of it was, we all came out stronger. We got a lot of respect from the community. And then we also did something, it also led to a change in how we provide information. As lawyers, we always say we don't comment on litigation. But we found that people, they do need to know what's going on and how we're handling cases. So we created a litigation transparency portal to where you can see all of the pleadings that are filed. We went and we purchased a transcript of the 3-day trial. It was $2,500. And yes, any citizen can purchase a transcript, but who has $2,500 to spend on that? And so it allowed for folks to have more access to the process. And so I'm proud of that, and I kind of stand a little taller about it.
I think that's a great example. Well, and this is a nice segue. It might be hard to imagine as an undergraduate now, but sometimes a process that's even harder than getting your first job is the discernment process about transitioning to a new job.
Yeah.
And so obviously the work that you were doing, with Mayor Pete, it's meaningful. You're getting to kind of touch the lives of other residents and, the place where you're raising your family. Can you talk a little bit about the process of deciding to leave and kind of any advice that you might have about how to discern well?
Yeah. So, it was the process leaving from the city to college. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So I'm like, now I've switched jobs three times now. So that process, when I joined Mayor Pete, I made a 2-year commitment. And then the 2-year commitment turned into a 4-year commitment. And I just was really, I always keep a list of big things that I want to accomplish, like the legacy that I wanted to leave for the college, and, for the city. And, that list was frankly also separate from the list of things that the mayor wanted me to accomplish, right? And so I would always kind of look at that list and check in. And I got to a point to where every experience that I wanted to get from this role, I had gotten. And everything that my main client had set out for me to do, I had accomplished it. And so I was trying to think of new things that I wanted to do, and I was feeling like this feeling of restlessness, I feel like there's something more. And then when the mayor decided to run for the DNC chair, that was an eye-opening thing for me, because I had to discern what would that mean for me career-wise. Are there options to telecommute? Yeah, but I've done a really good, I try to have done a really good job to lead a balanced life, balance as I define it, that caveat, of being the type of mother-involved parent for my daughters. And so that wouldn't work. So that's when this opportunity to join St. Mary's College really just fell in my lap. I mean, I had really been praying and asking God to, open up doors. And so I said, this is a skill set that I don't have on my resume. I have never worked in a not-for-profit. And the office is different than what I'm used to. And so I was like, why not, right? So I did a little research on it, talked to my trusted mentors, and made the move. And what also is a big plus about it is I'm still able to be engaged with the city.
So one of the things that I'd like for us to talk a little bit about, we had a conversation earlier, and so I hope that we can kind of get some of that same great advice out to the room. But specifically, thinking about the ways in which women are often kind of held to different standards in terms of what makes a good leader versus like too aggressive, not aggressive enough. What are some of the lessons that you might share about how to find that balance and lead well while still being kind of who you are created to be?
Yeah, I think you have to just tune out the stereotypical noise. You know, you just, and I know that that is easier said than done, but, you know, I've always sort of lived my life as I'm not trying to prove anyone wrong. The person that I'm trying to live up to are like my own standards, right? And people are going to have, they will make assumptions about you. And one of the things that I was sharing is, all right, so I'm young. I don't know if I'm young in this room, but I'm younger, right? And I'm a woman, and I'm a woman of color, and I'm small in stature, and I like to wear pearls and dress feminine, right? And so sometimes if people have backward views, they might assume that I'm a pushover. Shame on them, you know, like that's their mistake. So I always make sure that I make decisions and I act with integrity because no one can challenge that. I make sure that I am dependable because that is, I would say, frankly, a trait that is lacking in every industry. If you say you're going to meet a deadline, meet it. If you say you're going to do something, follow through. And I'm not intimidated. I know that I have a great education behind me from Valparaiso University, a great one at Notre Dame Law School, I have great experiences. And I have a voice, I have a value. And if you don't listen to that, then, you know, you might end up losing in trial. I don't know what to tell you.
So when you wipe the floor with them, they shouldn't be surprised. Yeah. One of the things that I'd like to talk about, I know that we have a lot of students in here tonight who are here as part of a core assignment. This semester, core is focusing on justice and community, which is a great topic. And so one of the things that I'd love for you to speak to is how citizens, and especially I think young citizens, no matter where they are, how they can be engaging with local government in order to help create a more just society.
So I think attendance and as many sort of meetings, public meetings that you can, is really important. A lesson that we learned at the city was, so our city council meetings were every second and fourth Monday. It would start at 4:30 where the sausage is made. That's where the committee meetings are debated. And then the full council meetings would be at 7. And that doesn't work for everyone's schedule, right? For those whose schedule it does work, please go, especially the committee meetings. Because what we would find is that it was the same crowd of people coming. And so when you're living in that city hall bubble, you're only hearing from the same people. And so I think it's a two-way street. Government, we need to look and see how we can outreach and make opportunities, make it more, I guess, inclusive, right? And so it was a lot of work on us, but going out to community centers and having, you know, meetings at different times of the day. And when there is an opportunity to speak. Like seriously, speak up. It's powerful what happens when you you ask a question in a public meeting because it's being recorded.
Right.
And so you're holding that public official accountable. I mean, emails are great. They really are. But, you know, they are reviewed and edited, and you're probably not going to get as much information. You can show up and speak, do that.
Excellent. One more question, and then we'll open it up to all of you. You know, part of what we really want to be about at the Institute, and part of what we try to kind of get out of each of our speakers, is this idea of finding the balance between work that is practical. We have bills, we have student debt, we have these things, but also finding work that is purposeful. And so any thoughts that you have on kind of how to strike that right balance, whether it be there are different seasons where you're more in one camp than the other, or ways to kind of bring purpose into the more practical side. Any thoughts you have on that, I'm sure would be appreciated.
I would just suggest maybe you expand your definition of service. You know, I think that this might be controversial, but I think that you can even serve in your role if you're working on Wall Street. You know, there are ways that you can engage with your colleagues and your clients and be example of being a good human being and ethical. I mean, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but like seriously, an ethical, that is a way of serving the community, the business community. It doesn't necessarily mean social work, right? Or legal aid. And also, maybe it's not feasible for you to work in an industry or environment that is a traditional service, but you know, not-for-profit boards, they're always looking for smart, bright people that are willing to give their time and their talent and their treasure. But you know, and so I would just expand your reach on what that means, and that's all I would say on that part.
Great. So, audience, any questions for Cristal?
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Hussein. I am a senior nursing major, so like healthcare is my orientation, and God willing, I'll be done in like a couple months. But I've come to like believe that healthcare is kind of a right, and going forward, I know universal access is something that we'll eventually get to as a nation, but we're not there just yet. But you've worked in city government, and you've seen the disparities between like ethnic lines, socioeconomic, and racial. Can you talk more to like how you served, or how we could best get past those disparities and help those people that honestly need it as we like work towards a better system of access to care?
Right, that's a really great question. You know, so in St. Joe County, which is where the city sits, it's the county health department that is in charge of public health, right? And so, you know, it's the level of control operationally that you have is, as a municipal government, you don't have that, but that doesn't mean that city governments are off the hook. And so one of the things that we did as a city government was use the mayor's convening power, right? And what that means is the mayor calls the 2 largest hospitals in the area and calls the head of the health department, and let's talk about what are the pathways that we're going to do for equity in healthcare. Some of the other things that are feasible for a municipal government is to look at sort of the in terms of your economic development opportunities for healthcare facilities who want to come into your community, and tax abatements and things like that, and looking at the location of where those facilities will be, and to make sure that you do have that equal access, making suggestions of like, well, you know, where you are planning on locating this, there's another site which is actually along a transportation or around a bus line. What do you think about that? Just kind of using that convening power and influence even when you don't have control over the aspects, all aspects of it. It's one of the things.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, I'm Alicia. I was just wondering, you talk about ethics. Do you ever find it hard to be culturally sensitive or sensitive to like people's religion? Because I know sometimes ethics are really tied to your religion. So, like, I guess, how do you navigate it being your religion?
So I would say that for me, I just operate in the universal truth that every human being deserves respect and dignity. And so ethics for me is always being cognizant of that, is treating everyone equitable, right? And we kind of had a conversation over lunch to where it's really important that you know, you kind of also listen to like your intuition as well, you know. I feel like I can get more, I feel like I can get a little spiritual here because I'm at Valparaiso.
You're at Valparaiso University.
I'm at Valparaiso University, but you know, sometimes if something doesn't feel right, then it may not be right, And so you take that pause and make sure, am I going after my own interest, or am I doing for the interest of the good of the person in the community? So you're right that ethics can be defined differently in different cultures, wherever, but I think that the universal truth is that everyone deserves dignity and respect. And so that's just where I start and always hopefully finish.
A follow-up question to that, which I think is important. Was there anybody in your professional development that modeled ethical leadership for you in a way that really stood out? Or like the types of leaders that you would encourage students to seek out who could be good models for acting ethically?
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of different mentors. I would say one person that really models it, frankly, is not that I think is a very good example of modeling ethics. He's actually not a mentor, but he was a colleague. One of the things that stood out for me for Wayne is that he never says a bad word about anyone, and that is not even jokingly, and for me, that's really living his faith and his belief that everyone is equal and deserves dignity and respect. Now, I'm sure he thinks a lot in his head, I don't know, but I mean, frankly, that is something that I strive to do, because I am the queen of the eye roll. Like, I may not say it, but my face will say it all. Like, I think what you're saying is not making sense,
Right.
But, so I would say that's a good example. And frankly, my colleagues in municipal government, I think that we also were good examples for one another. I was presented with an issue where an allegation was made against a good colleague of mine when I was in the role of Corporation Counsel. She was the mayor's chief of staff, and the allegation was that she had misappropriated public funds, which would be, that's a crime. And then the complaint came to me, and, there were folks in the community who said, well, the city legal department should investigate that. And I knew that I did not even want the appearance of impropriety.
Right.
And so I referred that out to Indiana State Police as an independent agency. And this isn't just a story about my ethics, but it's also a story, frankly, about hers and the mayor's decision to support my recommendation that we not do this in-house. And that was a tough time of, and I couldn't make statements that supported her because, again, and that was really tough.
Yeah.
But I think that it also speaks to the need to kind of make sure, to the extent you can, join a culture and organization where there are these shared values of ethics and integrity.
Other questions?
Hi, earlier today you talked about Mayor Pete's Office of Innovation and how he implemented that in South Bend. Could you talk a little bit about why it's important for cities to have programs like that?
Thanks. So the Office of Innovation, it was created a couple of years ago, formalized the Office of Innovation. It was really just to send the message that we are open to discovering the best way and new ways to do things, that we want to encourage a culture of innovation. And even though, we're doing the same type of things that cities have been doing over 5,000 years ago, there are ways that you can do things more efficiently. And so one of the things that the Office of Innovation does is it helps us to use data to make informed decisions. And that is really key when you are being charged with administrating a budget of $387 million. You know, just because you've always appropriated this amount of money in this fund, you know, doesn't mean that you should do it that way all the time. What are the outcomes? Let's look at that. And so yeah, it's been great. I kind of do feel like the old person with the Office of Innovation, because they're all like fresh out of college, and they have like, you know, the stress ball chairs and the standing desk, and I'm like, what? Where am I? But it's really cool what they're doing.
Anyone else?
We hear so much about the conflict, the political conflict at the national level. You've been working at the local level. Did you experience partisanship in South Bend? How did it make you see what's happening nationally differently? What would be your guidance to us as a group, as we are, you know, if we are going to go out and get involved, and how to deal with this time where there seems to be so much mutual distrust of the two parties?
Thanks. So the unique thing about South Bend is that, maybe it's not unique, but what I found to be interesting and what I underestimated. So it is a traditionally Democratic area, right? And so you have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, you have 9 council members, 8 of the 9 are Democrats. And so, but there was so much tension between the branches of government. And you're like, they're Democrats, the mayor's a Democrat. And so not so much partisanship, but it is, dare I say, I mean, kind of losing sight of what public service is. It's not about fulfilling your own individual agenda. It's about serving your constituency, the residents of the city. And also, there seems to be in this country, and South Bend's not excluded from that, a lack of the ability to have civil discourse and to distinguish the fact that just because we disagree, we shouldn't personalize it, right? I can think that you have a bad idea. That doesn't make you a bad person. And too often, I think what we are seeing is that folks, if you don't agree with them, then you're a bad person. You're not smart. And which is one of the reasons why I'm so appreciative of the university, because what I'm sure is still continuing here is I never felt that here. You know, there was always the fostering of that civil dialogue. And I would encourage you to make sure that when you are engaging with your colleagues, with your classmates, that when you feel yourself getting really heated about something, practice that self-government, right? Because we all have control over our own selves. We don't have control over each other, which is quite frankly one of the reasons why things are so polarizing. But you do have control over yourself and how you respond.
The person back there.
So, as an alum of this institution, what would you say is one wish you would have for Valparaiso to make itself better or to grow in some way?
So, you know, I would say, I haven't been back in a long time, right? So things might have changed. What I've always appreciated about Valpo, it has a very strong international student population, and I think that adds to just the engagement on campus. I wish that it had a more diverse population of African American, Latino, Asian, Indian. I think that because diversity of cultures usually leads to different diversity ideas and just better dialogue and solutions, and not just ethnic diversity, but also socioeconomic, location, gender orientation, gender identity orientation. I just think that all of that just leads to a more, I don't know, just a more lively and productive and empowering institution. As for like higher education, that's what it's about, is exposing everyone to different ideas and thoughts.
All right, well, if all of you would join me in thanking Cristal for sharing her experience with us. And again, this is our first program of the spring semester. I hope that it won't be the last one that you spend with us. If you have any questions about the programs that we run here at the Institute, you can find me, my colleague Allie DeVries, who's in the back, or the director of the Institute, Elizabeth Lynn, who's over there. Thank you all so much.